want to speak a little bit about this Brexit Party protest in the EU Parliament. I want to keep this quite refined because honestly, I think it's a bit of a joke. It's not worth a long video. But I do want to say something about it because it's perhaps symbolic of the silly side of this Brexit thing. So, if you don't know about this, basically, members of the Brexit Party turned their back in the EU Parliament whilst the EU anthem was being played. Now, it was a peaceful protest, it wasn't violent, but I think there is a compelling argument to be made that these people are still taking their salaries from the EU, from an institution they so despise. That strikes me as a little bit hypocritical. I think the Brexit Party, if they really have so much conviction, would it not be better to just boycott the institution altogether? I mean, they don't believe in the EU, they don't trust the EU. So, is it really productive to stay in the EU in that position? But like I say, they have to take their salaries. So, it does strike me as a bit hypocritical. Um, there are other precedents. Sinn Féin doesn't take up their seats in Westminster. Now, some could argue that they still get paid, as they do, and they should be legally obliged to take up their seats, given that they get a salary from Westminster, the Sinn Féin MPs from Northern Ireland, that is. Um, but it isn't just this back-turning thing. Anne Widdecombe came out with a speech in which she made blatant analogies between slavery and our membership of the European Union. Now, I understand contentions with the EU. I've said this time and time again. I understand the contentions about sovereignty. I understand the valid perception that the EU is not as democratic as it could be. But to compare our situation with slavery, this is according to the Eye. After the speech, Labour MP David Lammy tweeted, Anne Widdecombe just compared Britain leaving the EU to slaves rising up against their owners. It is impossible to explain how offensive and ahistorical it is for you to equate my ancestors tearing off their chains with your small-minded nationalist project. Shame on you. Now, whether you believe that Brexit is a small-minded nationalist project or not, and I'm not necessarily of that viewpoint, although I did vote May. I agree with Rami that the analogy is grossly offensive. It is absolutely preposterous. And there will be Brexit Party people who will be applauding her. Anne Widdecombe is the new Spartacus. I mean, really, this is pathetic. It isn't just a gross analogy to the transatlantic slave trade, where slaves were cramped up on filthy ships, where they were surrounded literally by death, decay, feces, where the dead were simply thrown overboard or left there to rot, or indeed the modern day slavery, where children worked to the bone, for a pittance, if anything. In fact, there's more slaves in the world today. So this, to me, just shows the desperation and the pettiness of certain Brexiteers. And it just lends itself to the negative stereotypes of Little Englander. That's what they fail to grasp. They so resent that stereotype, and yet they're lending themselves to it with this sort of crass, stupid, ignorant analogy. We are not slaves. Ask yourself, if you're a British citizen, do you honestly feel like a slave? A slave? My God, it's pathetic. And just for balance, I say the same thing about those Liberal Democrats who put bollocks to Brexit. It's childish, it's infantile. This protest was peaceful, but I do think it's disrespectful. Okay, they'd argue it's meant to be disrespectful, but if they want to be taken seriously as a serious party, then they need to start acting professionally and, turning their black backs during the anthem, I think is just infantile. It's just, I don't see what it achieves. As for Widdecombe, I think she should apologise, and she really believes it. She should apologize if it was a slip of the tongue, but I think she knew what she was saying. So you know what? No, I take that back. She shouldn't apologize. She should expose the ignorance of these Brexiteers coming out with this sort of crap. And I've no doubt there will be lots of Brexit Party members support her. Some, the reasonable ones, will recognise how stupid it is and distance themselves from it. You know, I when I raised this issue on a forum, discussion forum, there were Brexiteers who said, no, we agree, this is infantile, doesn't represent Leave people. And I, as a Remain person, I say that those Lib Dems who had bollocks to Brexit on their t-shirts, just as infantile. Um, Silly season, But really, comparing our membership of the EU, for all its problems, with slavery, utterly pathetic.